Hello, everyone. I'm Sean,
This is whom?
and we are the Courageour Frights back once again for another series review.
Yes.
So, this is our review of Terminator Zero,
Yes. So
which
it's kind of like
is,
the newest Terminator product compared to Dark Fates, I think was the last thing that came out was Terminator.
yeah, which was not well received
No.
by most of the fan base. So, this is an anime series on Netflix, 8 episodes, came out August 29th, but we just finally got around to
Yeah. It
watching
actually was made by the same studio. So Studio Production IG made it, and they were the ones that made Ghost in the Shell, which you can really tell because of the way
Right, yeah, the style of it's very
Yeah.
similar. It was, in my opinion, much higher animation quality than the typical Netflix anime.
Yeah. They use like 3D animation in this show, but it's a lot better than some of the ones that are like, I guess Godzilla. That Godzilla's the one I always go back to because it's so bad, but
yeah, I think it was blended well or something.
Yeah.
Like there was a 2D, 3D blend to it that
Yeah.
really made it less noticeable.
It kind of like I kind of have a feeling of like Castlevania. Actually, I had like a very Castlevania.
Yeah, which that quality is not bad.
Yeah.
So we've got here's a briefest synopsis possible. So in 1997 Tokyo, Malcolm Lee is developing Kokoro, an AI system intended to compete with Skynet. The day before Judgment Day, Lee finds himself and his 3 children pursued by an unknown robot assassin, and a mysterious soldier from the year 2022 has been sent to protect him.
Yes.
So it's very similar to the original Terminator.
Yeah.
I think there's elements from all the Terminator films in there, but the strongest
even Dark Fates, I'm pretty sure they referenced that part of Dark Fates. I'm pretty sure.
I think they referenced everything at some point, but it's primarily the original Terminator.
And actually, one thing I do kind of like the way they do the references in this movie. They have references in it, but it's like not like in your face references, like some things, direct references that they like to do nowadays.
Yeah, Alien Romulus.
Yeah.
Not that I dislike Alien Romulus, but it had some heavy-handed quotes and callbacks.
Yeah.
So we have a Terminator here. This is also, I think, the first time they've ever done Terminator without Arnold in some capacity. Not even a reference to him, really.
No, they just said that they have robots that come back in time. Like, I think they even specifically said, but I didn't say it was like that specific Arnold. Like, it was like. Actually, in the first movie, they don't really like Arnold. Just one of the Terminators. They have multiple different versions.
What you would think, because otherwise, every time you see Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know he's a robot.
Boy, that's Terminator. Kill him.
Again, Alien Romulus with their assembly lines with the same face. It's like,
I know.
I think it would be fairly obvious to recognize somebody's a synthetic or a Terminator or whatever if they have the same face.
Yeah.
So we get one person, Akel, goes back in time from 2022 to 1997. I do like how they kept the original timeline.
Yeah.
And didn't try to update it to the present day or whatever, because we end up with 1997, which is when Judgment Day traditionally happens.
Yeah.
And instead of setting it like, 2027 or some bullshit.
Yeah.
So Aiko basically is your Kyle Reese.
Yeah, because I think the very first scene, because the way they have the episode numbers is model 101 and it goes up to model 108 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the first scene is, I think, Aiko like fighting a Terminator in her time. So it's almost like Salvation. It's like literally like Salvation because it has like they're in the future.
Yeah, they have bits of the future war in there.
Which was
that scene was cool, but the Terminator has like the world's worst aim.
Yeah,
like I don't know what's going on there. He can't hit shit.
I think maybe because he blew up like that bomb. I think it kind of screwed up his targeting system or something. But it's at the same time, it's like this got to be like the worst Terminator in existence.
Yeah, I think so. So our main character is Malcolm Lee, who is a scientist developing Kokoro, which is his AI system. He's he's almost an amalgamation of a Connor, like a Sarah Connor, a John Connor, mixed with Miles Dyson.
Yeah. because they have like you think he's like the scientist, but there's kind of one of those things where it's kind of like he knows, like the very first episode, he's dreaming of like Judgment Day, and he's dreaming of like basically. I guess you learn later on. You learn that he told his kids about the Terminator and everything else. Is like, why do you know?
So you know something's up with him.
Yeah.
This show is kind of goofy towards the end because it turns out that every single character has like some twist or something.
Yeah, was all come back from the future or something.
Yeah, they're either a robot or they're from the future or their programming is like the opposite of what you think it is or something. It's like the M. Night Shyamalan effect.
Yeah.
And then we have Misaki, who's the housekeeper for his 3 kids.
Yeah, and it's kind of there's a little bit of a weird thing because she's always like looking at just like blood and stuff. It's like kind of off-putting when you first see her because she's just like not really. She doesn't seem like it's like a normal person almost, but
it's just kind of distant.
Yeah, distant, and she's kind of like looking at her cut and stuff because like bleeding, and it's just like she's like a weird doing some weird stuff, and it's like, oh, you're bleeding everywhere. Oh, I am, I guess.
I guess. Kenta is his oldest son. He's
he's
a jerk.
Yeah, he's like the scientist character where he just like he doesn't really care about it. Like I guess he does care about his siblings, but it's kind of like he's more interested in like working on machines and stuff like that. He's like, oh,
he's got to take everything apart.
Yeah.
And then there's Hiro, who's the youngest son.
Yeah, and he's kind of like supposed to be the voice of reason almost.
Yeah. And then Reika is his daughter.
Yeah. Hiro and Reika
really
almost kind of the same characters.
Yeah, pretty much. Reika really likes robot cats.
Yeah. I guess they specifically say that it's because I think you learned this in the first episode, I believe, where you find out that the dad is like Malcolm is kind of like he's like the traditional Japanese working father. It's just like he's never working kids. He's always working, and he's like, oh,
yeah, which is
kind
a common.
Like, oh, I'll spend time with you, but no, I'm not. I got to go work. Basically, it's like
right. He makes a promise, and then he immediately has to break it because of work or something, which is a common trope in everywhere, not just Japan.
Yeah, and he's basically not really the most, at least from the gather, he's not really the most. He's not really the best father, I guess, in existence. He's not like
no.
And then he basically has his housemaid, which is Misaki, is like, oh, you take care of him. But she does buy like a robot cat, which is basically it's a callback from an Aibo, which I don't know if it's an Aibo is like a robot dog during this time period. So this is what year was this? 1997.
97, yeah.
So 97, you have the PlayStation coming out pretty soon. The Nintendo 64 is coming out, and also the Aibo came out. And also, you kind of learn about these things called Inos, which is almost like the Asmo machine. Like they look like the Asmo like Honda robot during this time period. So there's a lot of stuff that Japan had a lot about robotics at this time period.
Yeah, I liked how it was almost like a slightly hyper futuristic version of 1997.
Yeah.
So, like in real life, some of these things existed to some capacity, but they're very limited. And here, they're like everywhere.
Yeah, people have like butlers and stuff like that as like robots, which they do make a point about that in one of the later episodes.
Yeah, which that makes sense within the continuity of the series, and also that futurism also makes sense because it's tying back to a film that came out in 1984 and its 1991 sequel, which both of them are set. Well, the original is actually set in 1984, but Terminator 2 is set, I think, in 1996.
Yeah.
So it's slightly in the future.
Yeah.
From when it was made. So this feels like a 1997 from maybe a show or something from 1992 or 93 or something.
Yeah.
So it's almost like set in a future, even though it's in the past, which is interesting. And then Kokoro is the AI that's developed by Malcolm Lee. That was, they were advertising as being dubbed by Rosario Dawson. However, obviously that's the English dub.
Yeah.
The English dub for this I found to be hilarious because they keep changing people's names or just mispronouncing them.
Yeah.
like Reiko. They kept calling her Rika all the time, or it was like really weird.
Yeah.
Sometimes she was Rika, sometimes she was Reika. Same thing with the person from the future. Aiko was sometimes Aiko.
It's like great.
Sometimes people didn't even know how to pronounce their own name.
Like I actually watched the Japanese.
I did too after I
Really?
listened to the dub for a bit.
But I figured
just
it was
thought
in Japan. I might as well watch it in Japanese. But
yeah, I kind of went back and forth between the English dub and the Japanese dub. And the English, the one thing that stood out, the voice acting wasn't bad, but the one thing that stood out is characters mispronounced their brother or themselves. It was like,
their name all the time.
Yeah,
Actually, that's another thing that happened. Like, I know they made a big deal that Timothy Olyphant was supposed to be the Terminator as a voice actor.
Yeah.
He literally doesn't talk until the very last episode for like 3 lines, and that's like it.
Yeah, it's very limited.
Yeah, he's just like, I can't self-terminate. Do this, and that was like it. That was
which is literally like a callback to Terminator 2.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, overall, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's probably the best thing that's come out of the Terminator since.
I do agree with that. 2. It has a couple different ideas that I don't think ever really happened in Terminator. Like, I don't think Terminator really has some of these ideas in it.
Dueling AI, I think, is different.
Yeah, because that's the big thing is where, like, in the story, in the premise of the story is, like, Kokoro apparently comes online and actually kind of saves Japan from, like, everything else. Because I guess after Judgment Day, like, the nukes just, like, land everywhere. But Kokoro stops the nukes from hitting Japan specifically because they have it. It kind of like a bubble over Japan because that's how it's supposed to be made. He's making specifically Kokoro to protect them from Skynet, which Skynet's just like blowing everything up. But it has like competing AI because Kokoro is almost like the enemy of Skynet as well. It's not like just like Skynet's puppet or something. They're the enemy of each other.
Yeah. Malcolm designed Kokoro to be the opponent of Skynet.
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting about Kokoro is that he developed her with like a conscience or like a moral basis, which is interesting because it's Kokoro's job to decide what humanity's fate is.
Because I think Malcolm even says he was trying to develop a god, basically.
Yeah, which is basically what it is.
And he was like, I think he talks about even like it's going to determine if humanity will survive or not.
Right.
So it's like,
which at one point Kokoro, I think, determines that humanity should survive but should be enslaved.
Yeah.
So it becomes a slightly different threat.
Which I think that's kind of one of the things where they talk about, because she makes a point of saying what does robot actually mean, and apparently it means like slave or something.
Yeah, it means slave. Yeah, it's a Slavic word. I think it came from like Czech or something.
Yeah, and it's like I guess it does make sense if I guess it's like I'm just going to slave the human population because we need humans to fight back against Skynet.
Yeah,
it's kind of like okay, but then also I think there's another theme in this show is where fate's. I guess when you go back in time, it's the paradox, the time paradox, like the time travel paradox. Is if you go back in time, is it really the same future or the same timeline? They even say that when you go back in time, it's actually not the same future. It's like the Trunks effect.
Right. As it's saying, is usually there's typically like 2 different types of time travel.
Yeah.
You either have a back to the future situation where you can alter the past.
Yeah.
And then the past alters the future. And it's all one connected timeline.
Yeah.
And then you have the other is like the Dragon Ball Z style where it creates like another timeline every time you go back. And it won't affect your future, but it'll affect some other future.
Yes, it affects that specific future.
Which is like Avengers Endgame is another example of the Dragon Ball version. So...
I guess that's
kind of what this is.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting concept, which I don't think was the original Terminator. Did they really go through that? Or like, I guess that's their whole point in that movie was the Terminator. Like, I guess every time they go back in time, it's not really the same timeline. Because I think Dark Vates kind of had that.
Well, the original Terminator, it seemed like they didn't quite know what would happen. It was just like Skynet was like
still
both
around.
Skynet and the Rebellion were both like grasping at straws, and they came up with this time travel idea.
Yeah.
And then I think Skynet created it, and then the Resistance like stole it or something.
Yeah, which I think that's kind of what this first episode they talk about this, because they're like, oh, they're going back in time. We need to go back in time as well.
Right, which they have addressed that.
Yeah.
In some of the newer Terminator things.
But I guess there's one thing that's kind of different, because like I said, we did talk about like at the very end, it has like you got all these twists and stuff. It's like Aiko is trying to shut down Kokoro. The Terminator is trying to shut down. It's like everyone's trying to shut down this machine. It's like the AI that's protecting them. But I guess you do learn later. I don't know. I guess you do learn that the reason why is probably because in their timeline, Aiko probably determined that humanity is a threat and they're destroying it. It's like pretty much destroying
Kokoro,
it.
Yeah.
And then this time it's like a little bit different.
Yeah. So that's like one of the major concerns with this show. But I mean, it made a lot of sense by it doesn't completely jettison Terminator 3 and after, but it never really directly addresses any of that stuff, which is probably a good idea. It's similar to Alien Romulus, where it only really, and Alien Romulus did the same sort of thing, where it referenced everything that ever happened in the timeline, but only briefly. Like each film got a small snippet in there, but its primary focus was the original Alien movie, and then a lot of callbacks to the second one.
Yeah, which
even though continuity-wise, Aliens hadn't happened yet. But
yeah. Which this kind of had the same thing, because you had like Terminator 1 for sure, because you had Aiko's Kyle Reese. Like literally the same character. I guess kind of.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Terminator 2, there's a scene in this show, I think it was like episode 103 or something, or model 103, where he's basically in the police station. It's basically the same scene almost. Because he's in the police station just shooting all the people, and he's like, but he's wearing the same suit from like the second movie, like when the Terminator, the T1 as a T1000.
Yeah.
He's like, do you know this kid or whatever? But he's like killing everyone in the police station because he's trying to find what's going on.
Right.
This is actually Saki's not a human either. It's like a robot.
Right. It's heavily a combination of the first two.
Yeah, and then I can't remember if they really put too much about the third one though. I can't really remember anything about the third one.
No, they
didn't. The only thing I remember is where Arnold's like
talk to the
That's the only thing I remember from that movie. I don't remember anything else. I guess it's about Skynet, but it does have a lot about salvation, because that's like the future war.
Right. Stuff. That's the thing I always bring up when people are like, "Oh, we won is the future war." It's like that was Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, that was Terminator Salvation that no one watched.
Came out like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And
then the fifth one, that had a different AI, didn't it? If I remember correctly, the fifth one had a different like AI system. Like it was some guy that made they made John Connor like evil or something, like an evil John Connor.
Yeah, that was the one with the nano machines or whatever.
Oh yeah, because if I remember, because John Connor was like not.
Yeah, John Connor is like a nano machine, and it was spoiled in the trailer.
Oh yeah, because they made like a Terminator that was John Connor, and they sent it back in time to kind of like
that was the one that was like the greatest hits collection, because they went back to redo the original movie, and
oh yeah,
T1000 was in it. He was a Korean guy for some reason.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then the last one is Dark Fates, which we all know everyone hated, but I never saw it. So
yeah, I saw it when I was in Japan. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but it does completely negate Terminator 2, which is like a really stupid decision.
Because I think the first scene is John Connor dying or something. He gets shot.
Yeah, Arnold goes back and kills John Connor like a week after Terminator 2 happens. Which makes it pointless. And then in the future, a woman rises up who's is now the new John Connor. And now Skynet doesn't exist anymore, but some other entity that's the same thing as Skynet with a different name exists instead.
Which
so
I guess
it basically made everything pointless, which I guess is the idea, but at the same time, is that a movie people want to see?
yeah, especially Terminator 2, which is like the best one out of the series, I'd imagine. Or maybe I guess it depends on who you talk to, because Terminator 1
it's like Terminator is very much like Alien. It's either people really love the first one or the second one.
Yeah.
But they really like both of them.
Yeah.
But there aren't too many people. I've never seen anybody that hates Terminator 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Or Alien or Aliens. Almost every person I've ever talked to likes all of them, but they prefer one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, personally, I like Terminator 1 more than Terminator 2, but I totally understand why people like Terminator 2.
Yeah, I watched Terminator 1 just recently. That is a really good movie. I will rewatch Terminator 2 again. But I've seen Terminator 2 like multiple times, but I'll have to rewatch it just to compare it.
Yeah, I mean, you have so many. You almost have stock in Terminator 2 physical media.
I kept forgetting I had it. I bought multiple copies. I think
you literally just gave me one at some point.
I had the Terminator 2 here, which is I got this. Then there's the special edition, which this is like you can't even play on your Blu-ray player anymore. And I think I had like another 4K version of this or something.
Yeah, I think you gave me one.
Yeah, I gave you one. I was like, you want Terminator 2? Here you go.
Here, you want Terminator 2? You're just handing them out.
I was just giving them to like people on their Halloween trick-or-treating gifts of Terminator 2.
Handing out Terminator 2 copies. Yeah, because the one I have is the one you gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I grew up with the first Terminator, but I don't remember watching Terminator 2 that much as a kid.
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with the fact that every other line is the F word.
Oh, yeah, probably.
That's probably why my parents wouldn't let me watch Terminator 2 as often.
Yeah.
Because there's a ridiculous amount of swearing in Terminator 2. It's all from Sarah Connor for the most part, but
yeah,
I do remember that. But the first Terminator I did watch a lot, although I probably watched the TV version or some bullshit. But
yeah, well, they probably took out some of the stuff. Like, fuck you.
For some reason, I guess for some reason Terminator 1 must have been on TV more often or something, or at least I caught it more often.
Probably because Terminator 2 probably was. I think Terminator 2 was a longer movie. I remember.
I think it is.
3 hours long or something.
Yeah, it's pretty long. I think. Yeah, it used to be like on USA all the time or something.
Yeah.
So
but it is a good movie. Like, it's really good.
Right. They're both good, but I always like the first one more. The first one, as much as apparently there's people that hate this, the first movie essentially is a slasher film.
Yeah.
And same with Alien, but there's people that complain about that too.
Yeah.
But it's essentially a slasher film. I mean, they both even have the final girl protagonist with Sarah Connor or Ellen Ripley. You're essentially silent killer.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the Terminator talks, but I mean,
it's like
for the most part,
he kind of is just there to talk, make specific lines every so often.
Yeah, he's just walking around killing people and trying to kill the main character. And she's just trying to survive. I don't know if people have a problem with it because they take the term slasher too literally and it's like the attacker has to have a knife or what. Like,
or I think they probably do it because it's one of those things where for some weird reason people think that horror isn't like a genre that means anything.
Oh, yeah.
That stupid idea that they're like, oh, it's because if you say it's a slasher villain, then it just like puts away from the way the movie is or something. But it's like,
you get these people that complain like that's not horror. This isn't horror. It's like, well, what is then?
Or it's like horror is just like not thought-provoking or whatever. You can't have a thought-provoking horror movie. It's just
even though there's tons that
are. Even though horror but probably more
they don't think that's the case because of the fact that they don't realize what is and isn't horror.
Yeah exactly.
So that's a discussion topic for another day, I guess, but has always been a factor in these. And when this was being advertised, Terminator 0, to get back to the point, Terminator 0 was being advertised as a return to the slasher roots.
Yeah, I know. That's even said that, I think, the director.
Which is where that whole tirade we just had came from, because Blade Disgusting had an article about it. Everybody in the comments section.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's fewer places with more scum and villainy than the Blade Disgusting comments section. But
yes,
it's truly the most Isley of the internet. But there was a lot of people that were complaining about it not being a horror film or not being a slasher or whatever. And it's like, okay, whatever.
Like it is pretty horrible. I mean, the guy rips his skin off. He cuts his arm and then rips his skin off. That's pretty horrifying.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is some body horror. I mean, there's that. There's the part where he cuts his eyeball out. Yeah. Which, I mean, he's a machine, but it looks like a human. And it's bloody.
They make him to look like humans for a reason.
Right. So, yeah, there's body horror in there. There's slasher.
Yeah, slasher roots.
Elements. Yeah. Sci-fi horror types. I get, maybe that's the issue. Sometimes people have issues with sci-fi horror. It's like, it has to, if it's sci-fi, it can't be horror. And it's like, there's tons of movies that are both.
A lot of times sci-fi and horror are together because sci-fi is, it's like stuff you can't conceptualize. It's like, it's supposed to be fine.
Yeah, which the series does blend them very well. I mean, like I said, as long as you don't have an aversion to animation, I would think that if you like Terminator 1 or 2 or both, then you'll probably like this.
Yeah, you'll probably like this because this is it does a pretty, like I said, it even brings up ideas. It's pretty interesting with a Terminator movie, which hasn't been done,
which Terminator always, well, not always, but typically was trying to design like thought-provoking ideas. But this one seems more topical because it's dealing with AI, which is like a real world
thing. And I think that's just like if you're wanting to do something with a real world, I guess technological advancement, AI is the one thing to go with. And you already see it now because you have like competing AI companies. You have Meta AI, you have Google AI, and all this other stuff. Yeah. They're kind of competing, as every company has like an AI thing. So it kind of would make sense that if you had competing companies, you would have AIs that probably would be competing against each other.
Right.
But I guess the one difference, I think we talked about that earlier. About the one difference is Courageour is more like almost like an android more than it's like a cyborg. Skynet's more like your traditional just information dump. Like it takes this information and determines what it does from there. Courageour can kind of think a little bit more human, I guess you can say.
Yeah, like I said, Courageour was designed to feel more.
Yeah.
Like it has difficulty doing that because it's a machine. But that's essentially what it was designed to do, was to solve moral dilemmas more than Skynet was just a straight
humanity is the enemy, right?
It's just a 0-1 binary computer system. Like it's not, which is, I mean, Skynet always was AI, but it was AI long before AI was something people even knew about.
Yeah, that was more like the traditional one where it kind of like gained its own sentience, but it's only like ones and zeros only. It's like it's black and white, no gray area at all. It's like it either is or it isn't.
Right. And there's no compromising with Skynet, just like the Terminator that it creates. It does you can't reason with it.
Yeah, it just keeps going forward. It doesn't stop until it finishes whatever it wants to do, like unless it dies, I guess.
Right.
And then I guess it has the same thing with this one, because you have Malcolm is a little bit different because Malcolm thinks that we can work with the Terminators. We don't have to be its enemy. But Skynet is, you can't reason with Skynet, but robots intrinsically isn't something you can't just throw away in the garbage.
Right, which has been an aspect since Terminator 2, where they've reprogrammed specific Terminator models and like used them to protect and that sort of thing.
Because they're like super strong and stuff. You need something to like protect you.
Right. It's much more efficient to have the T100, whatever, Model 101 or T800 or whatever protect you than send Kyle Reese back. That's a regular person.
Because he's like another human.
Yeah, he's much easier to kill than like Arnold
Terminator.
is.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, overall, I liked it. It has some issues, but it's not major. And as far as
Yeah.
the actual Terminator franchise goes, it's probably one of the better.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm more excited that they actually have a Terminator movie or a Terminator show that's not bad. Like,
That's basically where we're at with
yeah,
this franchise.
it's like you have something that's not horrible, like like the ones that come before this, like Dark Fates, I guess it'll be one.
Literally everything after Terminator 2 has had
Yeah.
some issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's
Salvation
because they keep
probably
trying to
was
do
the
the
best
same
thing.
thing. What's that?
Salvation probably was the best one.
Yeah,
out of
Salvation
all
probably
of
was
those
before
sequels.
that. I think it'd be like Terminator 2 then Salvation, because Salvation was different.
Yeah, and then 3 because 5 and 6 are like train wrecks.
Yeah, 5 and 6 weren't. I remember 5 was not. It was not a very good movie.
It was very convoluted. And then yeah, so I guess we're living in a timeline now where Terminator, Predator, and Alien are all kind of on good footing right now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool because those 3 franchises have always been sort of intertwined a bit. Now you just got to have a decent RoboCop thing, which I guess the RoboCop video game, I guess, was that.
Yeah, I heard that
was
actually
to form.
So, and I always wonder though, going back to this, is do you think they have enough to make a sequel? Like I mean,
they can always do.
Yeah, did they have? I don't know. Was this even did this actually show? Like, was this like a top? I think it was top 10, but I don't think it was like #1 movie or anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure how successful it was. That's hard to tell with Netflix. That's like one of the problems with streaming.
Yeah, what's the streaming services?
It's always quite difficult to see like the viewership figures and stuff.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. I mean, it has a pretty decent audience score. People really liked it, but
and its critic score is really high too.
Yeah.
Yeah, at one point it was 100%. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, I think it's like 69% now or something. It's like nice.
Nice.
But
they purposely did that.
Yeah, they purposely made it down to 69%. Yeah, it's not telling me. It's like everything else. It's like just people's reviews of it, but
it's an 89% Rotten Tomato score.
Oh, 89% Rotten Tomato. Okay.
With 77% audience score. So it's actually got a lower audience score than
it's probably people are like this. They don't like either animation or whatever.
Probably.
Or being like, but the only thing that they did bring up, they were like, we said in Japan because it doesn't have guns, but then they have guns everywhere.
Yeah.
Because it has there was like an element where like we talked about the Aino earlier. Because Courageour kind of controls all the Aino around, because she kind of because everything that's connected to like the computer systems, you can just kind of control. It had like a very iRobot feel to it. All those things felt like iRobot actually, because they were just kind of like at the very end where it just like tearing the machine apart, like Terminator apart or whatever. Yeah. It looked like an iRobot scene. I was like, this looks like iRobot. All we need is Will Smith somewhere. Will Smith eating spaghetti AI image.
But they were like, that part I thought was kind of ridiculous though, because it was like they're trying to take over Japan with these like unarmed robots.
Yeah, but by the end they have like machine guns.
Yeah, well, that's because they fought like the JSD.
Yeah, the JSA got like destroyed by these robots. They didn't have enough of them. That makes you wonder, like, how many robots did they build? They built like just armies of these things.
It's like a lot of them because they aren't bulletproof. Like they were fairly easy to kill. Like they weren't Terminators. It's
one of those things where you get a horde of them. It just kind of takes
turned into a zombie movie briefly.
Yeah, you can't like actually kill them fast enough before they get to you. But it's like, but I guess like all of them got just started killing everything.
These are the ones that were tested at Boston Dynamics or whatever. They got a taste for human blood now.
Yes, exactly. Well, I always thought it was funny though. Like that was part of the marketing materials. Like we picked Japan because it doesn't have guns, but then everything has guns.
Well, then they immediately take on the military, so then they had guns.
Yeah, everyone has guns, and the guy has like a shotgun by the end. It's like, the Terminator has like the sawed-off shotgun that you see in like a lot of those Terminator movies.
Yeah.
Like the Timothy Oliphant's Terminator. But that is another thing I did like, where he like
that.
he augmented himself with the actual Ino to like kind of blend in. I did kind of like that part because like I guess you could just if you have ports and stuff, you just add it onto your port. You'd be like, oh, we'll make your own thing, just like kind of make your own Terminator suit. But there was one part that kind of didn't make any sense because it did show like Kenta standing in front of the like the building he's trying to get to, but it shows him in the background, but he's like camouflaged in the background. It doesn't make sense because wouldn't he be able to see you? Like camouflages himself.
You would think.
It's like, but they already knew that he was already there, so it's like it almost like that scene was like unnecessary, like literally unnecessary because they knew that he was there already. So I was like, okay, but that's just those are just nitpicks or whatever. But it doesn't really.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff that's. I mean, it's not perfect.
Overall, the show is actually pretty good as like a Terminator show.
Yep, I would recommend it.
Yeah.
All right, so I think it's going to do it for our review of Terminator Zero. So you can go see it on Netflix. So if you like this video, give us that thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more like this in the future, and you too can feel the strength welling within. See ya.
See ya.